back to On the Wild, episode number 66. I'm Anuj Basker. With me, as always, Riley Keenan. Another year, another heartbreak for the Toronto Maple Leafs. What is this, 5 straight years they've lost in the first round? No other team has done that in the 4 major sports. Haven't won a playoff series since 2004, so the streak continues. Real quick, before we get into the NBA playoffs, we wanted to touch on the Leafs a little bit. You specifically, what they should do in the offseason, because, there has to be some sort of major change going forward to sort of head in the right direction, because they had all the talent, but they just couldn't get it done.
Yeah, it's tough. You said it best. This is the fifth straight season that they're bounced in the first round. This is I believe they're 0-10 in elimination games in those years, which is just baffling. It's they're up 3-2 on Tampa, have a chance to knock them out. They were up 3-2 on Boston that one year. They were up 3-1 on Montreal. All three they couldn't get it done. It's tough. When that game ended, I was at a loss for words. I had some people reaching out, and I didn't even I couldn't even respond. I didn't even know what to say, because when initially the idea of what do they do next came up, it was like, what do they do? It seemed as though they had fixed a lot of the problems they had. And I know a lot of people, I'd listened to the Spit and Chicklets podcast a little bit, and a couple other people, they're saying, the offense has been great all year, but the goaltending was the issue. But that's not the conclusion I came to. And I thought that was honestly the opposite of what we saw. Campbell stood up in that game 7. Regardless of what happened game 1-6, he got him to a game 7 against Tampa, and he gave up 2 goals in that game 7. Anytime your goalie gives up only 2 goals, you should win that game. You should win that game. And they couldn't score. They scored 1 goal. Obviously, they had another, and Justin Hall made a boneheaded pick. A lot of people were complaining about that penalty because you don't see it often, but he picked a guy. You can't stand in front of a guy's way and allow another guy like Tavares to get off a shot in the slot. So I thought it was a good call. But yeah, I think they couldn't score. It's the exact same thing that happened in Columbus. It's the exact same thing that happened in Montreal. In the elimination game, both teams have a chance to move on. They couldn't score. So I don't know. The issue clearly is scoring in late, season games. But at the same time, I don't know what they can really change. I think this is the best team that they've had in a long time. So I almost want to say run it back with this group. Obviously, you have to make a couple changes. You got to free a bit of cap space. So I'd say moving Alex Kerfoot's the first thing I do. But if you do need to make a splash, which I would completely understand, I think Nylander's the guy that's got to go, because it's not going to be Matthews. It's not going to be Marner. Riley proved this year that he can be, he can step up in those games and be a leader. Whereas Nylander, he's got a really, really good contract. I know a lot of people didn't like that initially when he first signed, but he's been a bang for his buck for this team. And obviously you can't move Tavares. His contract is too steep, and he's too old at this point in time. But yeah, I think you roll with Campbell. I thought he had a good year in Toronto. The defense has been solid, but I still think they need to go out and get a big right-handed shot. Otherwise, I think you roll with this team again. I think you give Keefe another year. I think he did a good job, and I really liked him in the press conferences throughout the entire playoffs. You give Dubas one more year and Shanahan one more year, but I think after this point, after this next season, if they can't get it done, management, you got to have a complete reshuffling and have a new set of eyes on this team. But other than that, I wasn't embarrassed this time around, which was nice, against Montreal and Columbus. It was just embarrassing. But this time, it's back-to-back champs. And even, Tampa said it best. Guys like Stamkos were like, this is a good group of guys, but they're coming into a tough team. And it's the way it folded. It's tough, but I think they can bounce back. The curse will be broken eventually. I'll say that.
Yeah, it has to be. Or else people just go insane.
It better be. I'm going to go insane. It's
the silver lining, I guess, is that Tampa Bay is up 2-0 on the number 1 seed. So I guess there's that. You lost to a really good team. It's not like you lost to somebody who you were overwhelming favorites over, which, I guess that's something. But hopefully they improve in the offseason, come out strong next year. But moving on to the NBA playoffs, the conference finals are underway. Terrible games. They've all been kind of blowouts.
Yeah, pretty bad.
Yeah, but I guess we'll start off with Miami and Boston. You just want to recap what happened in, I guess, the Milwaukee series, because we kind of talked about Philadelphia last week.
Mm-hmm.
What happened with Milwaukee and Boston. I just think Boston just played Giannis really well. And I think Giannis missed a lot of gimmies in the second half of game 7. I think it was like 3 for 8 or 3 for 10 in the paint, which isn't what he does. He's usually automatic in the paint. So I think he just had an off game, and the role players just didn't play well. No one was hitting shots. I think I said it when Ian was on, when we were predicting the series and how it was going to go for the rest of the way. I think I said, like, I don't trust the role players around Milwaukee to beat Boston 4 more times, especially without Middleton. Middleton not being there really was a huge blow to that team as a shot creator, as the secondary scorer to take some pressure off of Giannis. Drew Holiday had some pretty good moments in this series, but overall, offensively, he could have been a lot better.
Yeah.
But I think Milwaukee's still in a really good spot. I think they can make a trade in the offseason if they wanted to, but I think they have a good enough group to stay competitive in the East. But they won the title last year, and they've had some disappointing appearances before that. So I think some sort of change has to be made. Maybe like bring in a shot creator if you can in free agency, get some more shooters around Giannis. Just kind of retool the roster. But overall, I think they'll be fine going forward. Long term.
I think they're in a really good spot. Like they're gonna battle next year. They're gonna run it back with a lot of the same guys. I don't think it's a necessity to make a trade, but like you said, if they can get a couple shot creators, 3-and-D guys, that'll be huge for them. But yeah, the moral of the story, I think if they had Middleton, I think they win that series, and I think they potentially win it in 6. But obviously, without him, that's how the cookie crumbles. I mean, it was a tough battle, and they defended Giannis so well. And I think what did happen a little bit was, in the past, in the playoffs with Giannis, when he's getting forced, when he's down big and he's realizing, oh, I got to mount this comeback, which we saw him do, I believe, in Game 5. What was different about Game 7 was he wasn't as intelligent with his offense. A lot of the times he would. He uses his body and he can be aggressive, but he's, looking for outlet passes, and he's seeing every option on the court, and he makes the play. Whereas in Game 7, it seemed like he was trying to force it. He was trying to use his body too much. He was getting a lot of offensive fouls. I think he has the most offensive fouls in the playoffs a guy's ever had. I could be wrong. I think he had like 19 or 20. It was a lot. And same with Drew Holiday. He, we've seen it before where they get down and he forces a lot of bad shots. He steps away from his game a bit. I think he can take step back threes and moving threes, but it's not his game, and he's got a better way of creating a shot, and I think that hurt him a little bit too. But their role players didn't step up, and it was tough. And at the end of the day, you got to give it to Boston. They played incredibly well, especially on the defensive end. And Tatum stepped up and proved he's going to be a solidified superstar in this league. Jaylen Brown battled back a lot because he was struggling initially, but he was finding his own, and then. Yeah, you can't say
Williams.
Grant Williams, yeah, the Tennessee kid.
7 threes.
Yeah, that was insane. I love seeing him trash talk because he's one of those guys that he's got the great heart for the game, and he gives it 110% every play. I love watching him.
He's improved so much in the last 2 years. I remember a couple of years ago I was watching the game. It was the Lakers and the Celtics, and they would just leave him open, and he couldn't hit a shot to save his life. And now he's hitting 7 threes in a Game 7 of the biggest game of his life. So the way he's improved and kind of took an ownership, or not ownership, but like accepted the pressure and kind of embraced it. It's really cool to see how all these players on Boston, even like Peyton Pritchard, like young players are embracing the pressure in the moment and playing well.
Yeah. I love that you mentioned Pritchard there because he was hitting some massive shots in that Game 7. It was pretty remarkable. There was a couple ones that really shocked me. And at the same time, a guy like Naismith, on the defensive end, he had a couple critical blocks. So they're going to be built for the future really well. But yeah, the Bucks, I think they're going to come back, pretty solid next year that they can win a championship. But the Celtics right now, they're going to make it tough on the Heat. It's going to be quite the series. Obviously, it's 1-1 right now. Next game's Saturday.
Saturday, yeah.
I guess it would be tonight when this comes out.
Yeah, but so far in this series, Boston, it's 1-1, but Boston has won 7 of the 8 quarters so far.
Yeah.
The only quarter that they didn't win was the third quarter of Game 1, where Miami just came out firing and they ended up holding on to the lead in the fourth quarter. But Boston's pretty much dominated this series overall, other than that one quarter. So I think that Boston's going to take this series in 6 games. I think I think they'll win both games in Boston. Miami will take one, and when it comes back to Miami, and Boston will close it out in Game 6. I just think Boston is like I said this about Phoenix like a long time ago. We'll get to Phoenix and that disaster, but I think Boston's just like a perfectly built team in like the modern way. Like Al Horford is a very versatile big where he can play in the paint and he can also hit from the outside. Perfect role players like Marcus Smart, Grant Williams, like we were talking about, Pritchard coming off the bench, Derek White when he's healthy. I think he's coming back on Saturday. And you have your two stars in Tatum and Brown, guys who can create their own shot, but can also catch and shoot and play a role as well. So like unselfish stars is probably the best way to put it. They'll do whatever it takes to win. They play on both sides of the ball. They have the best defense in the playoffs that's remaining. I think they're the best team left. So they would be my finals pick, I guess, right now if I were to choose. But I think Boston gets it done in 6 games. Not to take anything away from Miami either. They've been playing great, but Boston I just think is a way better team right now.
And you've been one of the guys, all year that's been saying Miami is the real deal. So like to say that Boston could win this series, that just shows how good they've been in the second half of this season. I think the most important thing, and I think everyone would agree with that, is Marcus Smart. I think like he's the X factor in this series. He's the X factor in the conference finals. I mean, we saw it without him in game 1. Obviously, Al Horford as well. It was tough without him, and Boston was winning that game. Like in the first 2 quarters, they were playing really good basketball, and then the third quarter, obviously, he came out great. Jimmy Butler put up, I think, 17 points in that quarter. He was like 4 for 5 shooting. He was playing phenomenal. He was hitting, turnaround 180 jumpers. It was pretty awesome to see.
His stat line was insane. He had 41, 9, 5, 4 steals and 3 blocks.
Yeah. It was insane. I mean, it was that game put him in the same conversation as Michael Jordan in terms of, performances in the playoffs, which, going into this year, did anyone really expect that? I don't know. I mean, I've always, there's a lot of love for Jimmy Butler out there, but he's been stepping it up to another notch, putting himself in that, conversation.
We love Jimmy Butler. One of our first clips on Instagram, like from our first episode, is how much we love Jimmy Butler.
Yeah, it's great. I love seeing him out there.
Yeah, and the conversation now is like, is he a superstar? I think so.
I think so. He proved it.
Yeah. Because I'll compare him to James Harden, because James Harden was considered a superstar for a long time. Like he isn't now because of age; he's just kind of fallen off a cliff. But for a long period of time, he was a superstar, putting up 30 a game in the regular season, 35 one year, and in the playoffs, he just shut it down. He wasn't the same player, but we still consider him a superstar. It's kind of the flip with Jimmy Butler, where he kind of coasts through the regular season. He's never going to win an MVP. He won't ever make a first team All-NBA. But when the playoffs start, he just flips a switch and he's a completely different player. He's more aggressive on the offensive side, and he's just a way better player all the way around. So you have to consider him a superstar, because if you're going to consider James Harden a superstar without the playoff performances, if it's the flip, wouldn't it be the same thing?
Yeah, absolutely.
Jimmy Butler has to be a superstar. You have to consider him in that same conversation.
Like you have to put him up there with guys like Luka and Giannis in terms of stepping it up in the playoffs. Because obviously Luka and Giannis do it all year, but obviously they take it to another notch. Butler, I think you made the perfect comparison of just, he doesn't need to be that superstar in the regular season. He can be the facilitator. He can be the defensive-minded player and take shots when he needs to. But when it's go time and you need a bucket, he's going to give it to you. It's Jimmy Buckets. I mean, the guy's a beast. But I'll go back to Marcus Smart a bit here, because I think his impact without him in game 1 was massive, because once Jimmy Butler popped off in that third quarter, Boston didn't know how to adjust. They didn't know how to defend Butler. Tatum was doing a good enough job, but once he got going, there was really nothing he could do, and there was no one you could really switch off on. And obviously a guy like Al Horford, just his leadership out there is massive to have, and he's kind of their, you talk about Marcus Smart hitting threes. Al Horford's the guy that he gets left open a lot. And he's going to hit the big shot. And obviously without Smart and Horford in the lineup, that forces guys like Pritchard and Grant Williams to take a bigger role. Guys are going to focus on them more. They can't kind of hide behind, the other guys and take those big shots. So there was a lot of pressure put on them. And same with Pritchard on the defensive end. They were just going right at him all of game 1. So getting Smart back for game 2 really showed Boston's identity in terms of just being able to shut guys down. You were able to put Smart on Butler, and that made it a lot harder for him to score. I think Butler had 29. He was still, he's still able to score, but he was limited. And other guys weren't able to get going as well. I think Vincent and Oladipo were like the next highest scorers on the team. But yeah, Smart was able to shut it down, and I think it's tough that like I want to go with Miami, but but going going to Boston 1-1 is so tough. It's so tough because that building's incredible. They're coming in hot off getting Smart back, and Tatum, he had a really good game. Jaylen Brown's coming off a good game. So I think you may have said it best in terms of Boston winning back to back and then going back to Miami. I don't know if it goes 6. I think it can go 7. Um, but I'm going to take Boston as well, and that's shocking to me because I came into this series initially thinking Miami, but just Marcus Smart showed me so much that it's not just in the playoffs. We talked about it earlier this year. Like this team didn't have an identity in the beginning of the season. They were taking a lot of threes. Guys were just trying to create their own shot all the time. And as soon as Marcus Smart came back, the tides turned. So he's been such a pivotal player for them, and and obviously he's the defensive player of the year for a reason. A lot of people, some people didn't like it initially, but it just goes to show how important he is to this team. So yeah, I'll go with Boston 7.
I think it would be a little bit different if Kyle Lowry was healthy.
Yeah.
Even when he played against Philadelphia, it was obvious that he wasn't healthy. When he played, they didn't win. They were 0-2, and then when he didn't play, they were 4-0. So he obviously wasn't healthy. He was more of a liability when he did play. So if he was healthy, I think this would be a much closer series. I think Miami would even maybe have the edge, but I think Boston has it. But moving on to Phoenix, before we get to the Mavericks and Golden State, let's talk about Phoenix a little bit because wow, was that bad? That was maybe the worst playoff performance I've ever seen from a team.
Yeah,
especially in a Game 7.
It was shocking. I remember because I turned the game on at halftime. I was working and I got home and I didn't even look at the score. And the first thing that came up on the screen from inside the NBA was Luka Doncic 27 points, Phoenix Suns 27 points. I immediately checked the Bleacher Report because it was it was ridiculous. I could not believe that this good of a team with this good of a coach and that much veteran leadership and a guy who can be a superstar, a true superstar, and they put up that performance against it at home as well. Like the more things you add on, it just makes it even more baffling. I mean, I was completely shocked. And even then, like you think, oh, they had 27 points, so obviously Chris Paul must have been having a big game because he's been struggling. He had 1 point, no field goals. Devin Booker, 2 points, 0 field goals. I mean, I'm still blown away by it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you would never expect that, especially in a Game 7. That's your season on the line, and they just came out flat. It's like even from the start, like Luka came out and scored 8 straight points, or 8 quick points, and he was 3 for 3. He had 2 step back threes, which were not like they were dirty, and he was just like playing around with them, and then they just took it, like they had no response to it. It's like once he started getting going, they just gave up.
Mm-hmm.
It was weird to watch because it was because I've been so high on Phoenix. I've been saying this whole time. The only team that's going to beat Phoenix is Phoenix. I thought the only way Phoenix wasn't going to win the title was if Devin Booker got hurt or Chris Paul got hurt, which there are kind of rumors that he had a quad injury. That's not an excuse. If he had a quad injury, he wouldn't be out there in the fourth quarter down 30 points.
Exactly.
So I don't think that's a valid excuse. Booker didn't come to play. Chris Paul didn't come to play. They benched Ayton. He only played 17 minutes.
Yeah.
Apparently he didn't want to go back into the game or something. He had a little bit of falling out with Monty Williams. Even after the game, Monty Williams said that it was internal, kind of with like a bolder tone. So there's definitely some sort of animosity there. And he's a restricted free agent this offseason. So that's going to be something to watch to see if another team, if they were to offer him a max contract, which I've seen that at least 4 teams are lined up to offer him a max contract, if Phoenix will match the offer because he is a restricted free agent. They have an ability to match the offer. So we'll see if they do that. But this was their best chance to win a championship. I know we said that last year, I think too, but this is actually their best shot because players are going to want to get paid. Jay Crowder is going to be up, I think, after next year. Mikal Bridges is probably going to be up soon, or maybe he signed an extension, but Booker's eligible for a huge extension this offseason, and Chris Paul's not getting any younger. He's going to be 38 next year's playoffs, and he has 3 years left on his contract. So that brings up the question, do you trade him or do you there's a whole bunch of questions around Phoenix right now, which I don't know. I don't know what they do from here because they have to make some sort of change because you can't just run it back because it's proven to not work and teams are going to get better.
Yeah.
So they have to as well, which I don't know how they do that, but we'll see.
Yeah. And this is now the seventh game 7 in a row, I believe, that Chris Paul's lost. The seventh or
something like that. Yeah.
It's been a lot. And I mean, a lot of people have come out in the media. Have you seen Patrick Beverley? I mean, say what he's going to say.
I mean, I don't want to pay a lot of attention.
I don't want to get into Beverley either because I've been watching him Reddit talk, and it's been quite baffling some of the opinions that I've heard. But yeah, like this hurts Chris Paul a lot because this, like you said, this is the best chance that they've had, and it may be the best chance he's ever had in his career in terms of just having a good coach and a great team to back you up. Because even in his absence, they were able to win a lot of games this year with Booker. And another guy, Booker, the trash talking with Luka, it's kind of funny to see. As you know, I'm a big Luka fan, so seeing the Luka special, I thought that was pretty funny when he did it. You know, he's right. Luka flops a bit, but the swiping the ball out of his hands, that just went to show like who's the real dog in this series, and it was Luka. He's the guy that you guys want to talk. Luka went down 3-2 and said to the camera, "They all talk when they're winning." He knew he was going to game 7, and he knew he was going to win that game. It just goes to show the greatness of Luka Doncic already at such a young age, 23 years old. He's breaking records of scoring in the playoffs. But yeah, you got to be better if you're Chris Paul, especially if you're Devin Booker, if you're going to talk all that, nonsense and then not back it up. If you're going to go for 7 in the first half and have another brutal second half. It's bad. They got to come back next year. An incredibly strong team. Obviously, Chris Paul is coming back for another year.
He has 3 years left on his contract.
Yeah. This is the best chance has passed because I think, Dallas is only going to get better in the offseason. The Lakers are going to be coming back, I think. The Clippers with Kawhi. Utah, we'll see what they do. I don't really know.
Denver has their second and third best player coming back.
Getting Murray and Porter. So it's going to be
New Orleans going to have Zion back, you would assume. Yeah. So, yeah, it's only going to get tougher from here. Moving on to the Western Conference Finals, got Mavericks and Golden State. Golden State won by 25 points in game 1. Dallas just came out flat. Like they just weren't hitting shots. So I'm going to stick when Phoenix lost to Dallas, I think I texted you and I was texting somebody else as well about the game and just like I think Dallas is going to win this series in 7 games. I think game 1 was more of like they just had such a huge high and they just came out flat. Like a lot of the shots they missed were wide open shots.
Yeah.
Like they took 29 threes in the first half. A lot of those were wide open and they just didn't hit them. I think they shot like 29% in the first half or something like that. So I think that'll get, they'll be better because they are a really good shooting team, and Brunson and Dinwiddie have kind of proven the last couple of games in the Phoenix series that they can be kind of that second and third scorer. And I think Jason Kidd's going to make adjustments. He did it in the Phoenix series. He's proven himself to be a really good coach. So I think he'll make adjustments. So I would and I just don't think the playing Luka one-on-one with help, I don't think it's going to work all series because, like I said, they're just missing open shots. So if you double Luka, he's going to make the pass. Either that's an open shot or you make the extra pass to the corner and you're going to have an open 3 every possession. So I don't think that strategy is going to work all series. So they may have to run like a zone or I don't know what they'll do, but I'm not an NBA coach. They are. So not to take anything away from Golden State. They played great, and I think they've proven themselves to be the best team over the last decade, but I have a lot of trust in Luka Doncic and what he's doing right now. It's very LeBron-esque in how he's carrying his team and taking so much responsibility and being asked to do everything and delivering. So I'm going to take Dallas in 7.
Dallas in 7. Damn. I would not have pictured that at the beginning of the season, at least coming from you. Either. But yeah, I think a lot of the narrative of that first game was that the Warriors were playing shutdown defense and just weren't allowing anything. And Luka has probably his worst performance in the playoffs, at least from this season. But like you said, I think Dallas shot themselves in the foot. They missed 37 threes, second most all time in a playoff game. A lot of those shots were wide open as well. So you hit, a quarter of those, even a fifth, you're in a much closer game. And you're probably giving up less points because you're going on a bit of a run if you hit those shots. So I think Luka putting up 20 points, not shooting that well. I think that's just indicative of a team coming off a game 7, having to play 2 nights later against a Golden State Warriors club that's just waiting to play. And they had 7 different guys put up 10 plus points. It was a really good all around game from the Warriors. And going into it, the conversation was who's going to guard Luka. Is it going to be Draymond? Is it going to be Wiggins? I personally think Wiggins is the good matchup for him, just because he can move so quickly laterally, and I think Draymond in the paint helps a lot. But for me, it's like, who's going to guard these Warriors? Who's going to guard Curry? Who's going to guard Poole? Who's going to guard Clay? There's so much mobility in that offense, and terrifying. You can't let them get out to the corner. It is honestly scary when you lose sight of one of those guys, because immediately that 3 points, on the scoreboard for them. So I think if I had to make a prediction for this series, I would go Warriors in 6, because I do think Luka is going to be able to squeak a couple games out with some massive performances. And I think Dinwiddie will be better. Brunson will be better. Finney Smith needs to be better. He was pretty bad in that game 1. But when it's all said and done, I think the Warriors are just built really well this year, and they got a lot of guys that want it badly, and a couple guys that want to go back to the promised land. So it's going to be super tough, because I think Dallas, they have solid depth, and obviously I think they have the best player in the series. I wouldn't. Obviously, it comes with there was even a conversation: is Butler better than Curry? But I think it's obviously the situation that you're in. Curry's not being asked to do what Butler and Doncic are doing right now. He's got probably I wouldn't want to say the best team he's ever had. He's had quite a few unreal teams with him, but he doesn't have a Durant there where he needs you can lay off a bit, but he has a plethora of guys he can move it to, and he can take a couple plays off so other guys can get hot. And Luka, whereas he needs to be the star of the show pretty much all the time, and I think that's going to be tough to do in a 7-game series, especially away against a team that's been there before.
These teams are like the complete opposite of each other. The way Dallas is going to win this series, if they slow the game down in a half court offense, and that's what they are. Luka's not the most athletic guy, so he works better in the half court. But if you're not making your threes, Golden State, their whole team is revolved around working in transition, getting that open 3, running up and down the court. So if you're not making shots, they're going to blow you out. So if they make more shots, slow the game down, that's kind of where I'm coming from with my prediction. I think they'll be able to do that. So I'm going to go Dallas in 7, but I obviously wouldn't be surprised if Golden State won it. They have that championship pedigree. They've done it before. They've been there before. So would not be surprised at all. Mm-hmm. But before we wrap up here, I wanted to touch on something that just made me mad for some reason. Preface this, I'm not a huge college football fan. I don't think either of us really are. I'll watch the playoff games depending on who's playing. I'll watch the national championship game. But college football for me is more like, who are the best prospects next year in the draft? Yeah. And I'll watch those guys. But Nick Saban came out and said that let's preface this with a little bit of background information. So Texas A&M had the number 1 recruiting class. Alabama was number 2. So Nick Saban comes out and says, Texas A&M had the number 1 recruiting class because they paid everybody. We didn't pay anybody, though. And then he goes on to say that Jackson State paid Travis Hunter, who was the number 1 recruit last year, $1 million to go to Jackson State. So let's start off with Texas A&M. Yeah. You can't just say that. You can't just say, oh, they paid their player. You know what he sounds like when you play somebody in 2K and they beat you all the time? Because Alabama is the best college team. They have been for 10 years. They beat you every time, but then you get them one time, and they're like, oh, I wasn't even trying.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's that guy.
That grinds my gears. I think of times in that history of that happening. You're like, I earned that.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't have the number 1 recruiting class. The 5-star recruits didn't want to come to my team. Oh, well, they have to be paying everybody.
Yeah.
It's like you're accusing them of breaking the rules.
Yeah.
Because you can't use NIL or boosters to recruit incoming players. You can't use that. That's against the rules. We saw it happen to Reggie Bush a couple of years ago. He got his Heisman taken away. You can't do that. You can't use that as leverage. So he's accusing them of doing that, but he's also accusing 17-year-old kids of breaking the rules. So, and then going to Jackson State, Deion Sanders doesn't even make $1 million per year on his current deal with Jackson State to be their head coach. So they cannot pay one player with the limited amount of resources they have, because Jackson State isn't a Power 5 school. They're an HBCU, and they're an upcoming HBCU. They're probably the most publicized HBCU because of Deion Sanders being there. But they don't have as many resources as those Power 5 schools, not even close. So you can't pay somebody $1 million. That's just a waste of money and a waste of resources that you can put somewhere else. And then Travis Hunter even came out and said that if I made $1 million, why is my mom still in a 3-bedroom place with 5 kids?
Yeah.
Like, it's just, I don't know. It just comes off as like you're a narcissist sort of thing. That's how Jimbo Fisher responded to him. He called him a narcissist, which he's based off of this. He is.
Right.
It just sounds like he's entitled. Like he feels like he's entitled to all these.
Very entitling. He feels like, I've been at Alabama for all these years. I should be the number 1 class every year. But it's like, no, that's not the case. But also, I'm curious of what did he provide any proof whatsoever to back up these statements?
Not from what I saw. He just said it. Like you can't just say that without any concrete like proof that they actually did it. Because if your problem is with NIL just in general, just say that. You don't have to single anybody out. And if you have a problem with NIL, which is name, image, and likeness, players can make money off of that now, which they should have been for a long time. If you have a problem with that, like I don't know what to tell you, because these players deserve to get paid. The reason Nick Saban, you're getting paid $15 million to coach Alabama is because of these players and how good they are and how they generate billions of dollars for the NCAA every year.
Yeah.
Like the reason you are as successful as you are is because of these players, and you're mad at them for getting paid when it's not taking anything away from you. It's not like the university is paying them specifically. It's their, brand deals with other companies around the area, and they're just making money off of their name, which is what they own.
Yeah.
So
from the outside looking at it, and I'm the same as you. Like I don't watch too much college football. I'll watch the last, the Final Four. But to me, it seems like he's the kind of guy that's just like, he wants to be the reason for why people look at Alabama as this great school. When they win, it's always because they got this great coaching. But when you say that you've got the best recruiting class, and that just goes to show you that you have the best player. So how much of it is it really you? Obviously, they got a phenomenal program there, and he is a great coach. But if you don't have those great players, how good are you really?
Yeah, exactly. And it's not like he had this like the 20th best recruiting class. Yeah. He was number 2.
Yeah, that's pretty damn good. I mean, there's 150 different schools out there.
Yeah, I don't understand why he's so mad about it. It's like I don't know. I don't know what to say.
Yeah, because it's kind of sad. It honestly is to have to come out publicly and say that, obviously with no proof to even back it up. If I'm the Texas A&M team, I don't know if they play each other in the schedule. I'm not too sure.
They do. The funny part is, as soon as it all happened, they moved that game to 3:30 on CBS, which is basically like the SEC prime time from my experiences. Like all the big games are at 3:30.
That's awesome.
That was the funny part.
I will definitely tune into that game.
Yeah, because there's gonna be some animosity, of course, but
roll Tide.
It's just like Nick Saban's getting compared to Belichick a lot of the time, very like deservingly so. Like they're both the greatest coaches of their generation, at least, and they're very similar in like their mannerisms and stuff. But Belichick would never care about what other teams are doing. He doesn't care. He has no reason to. He just worries about what he's doing. Nick Saban should just worry about Alabama, mind his business. If you have a problem with NIL, like no one cares. Like that's your own problem. And just don't talk about other schools and don't just throw things out there, because like I'm happy that majority of the media and like public have acknowledged that he was wrong by saying all of that. But there's still gonna be like that small crowd that's just gonna blindly believe Nick Saban because he's Nick Saban.
Yeah. I find it kind of funny that you bring up Belichick there too, because obviously I won't get in too much into it. This is a conversation for another day, but they're very similar coaches, but you say that he wouldn't care, what people are thinking about it. It's the exact situation of what's going on right now. I remember I got an update today about Belichick. Apparently the organization is a little nervous about what he's bringing to the table offensively. So I think that's kind of funny how, very similar coaches, but two completely different personalities in terms of the media and just, the kind of things you're willing to share. But yeah, I think that's kind of funny. I mean, it's just a bad look for Saban overall.
And he's apologized for it. Do I think he's actually sorry? Absolutely not. He's
Yeah.
just saying sorry because of the backlash. But at least he did that. Deion Sanders said that he's still cool with him. He still loves him. He does the Affleck commercials with him. So I'm sure they'll keep doing those. But
Yeah.
I hated it. I don't know why this made me so mad because I don't really watch college football, but I don't know. This really grinded my gears.
Yeah.
But I think that's a good place to wrap up here. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Comment down below, and we will see you all next week. Take it easy.
Stay well.
Peace.